Hey guys, how y'all doing today? My name is Franchise Fanatic and welcome back to the channel. And today, if you guys, is another movie review. Today we're tackling a very highly anticipated film by me and presumably millions of other people around the world who enjoy horror. We're talking about Evil Dead Rise, aka I believe the fifth Evil Dead film. Now this is going to get kind of not spoilery, but there is a bit of lore building in this film, which I didn't really even expect to really be touching upon. So this is going to be a non-spoiler review because this is a film. I think horror movies, they're kind of like mystery films in a sense that if you get spoiled, or it's like Avengers Endgame or the Star Wars movies or stuff like, if you get ruined on this, like at home, if you're scrolling through Twitter or whatever, you're going to be freaking mad, okay? I know I would be mad, so I will not be ruining the film. I in fact, highly advise you to go and, watch the movie in theaters because, holy crap, I went with my one buddy. And the movie itself is phenomenal, but the actual, like, the way that the film was, like, presented in the cinema, it's a horror movie, right? So it's loud as fudge, and I'm freaking, like the walls are to my left and right, obviously, because that's how buildings work, and it just, like, the not only the jump scares, but like the sound effects, man. The sound design is impeccable, but, that scene in the trailer where Ellie is possessed by the Deadite, she's cracking the eggs, or she's moving the thing, and it goes, whatever, like the character. Again, this is an R-rated film. You're not going to see anything, but I have to tell you this stuff. In the trailer, right, one of the Deadite people, eats a wine glass, and she's chewing the glass, and she swallows it. You see it pierce her esophagus, and but you hear that, and it's like, oh, dang, you know what I mean? Like, dang. Like, if the sound design was trash, it wouldn't have hit as hard. And of course, because I'm in a really good theater, this thing is like booming in my freaking eardrums. So I'm like, you know what I mean? Like I'm shocked I didn't like with my popcorn. It was nuts. But yeah, so the sound design was really good. The of course, obviously, before I even get into the lore of this franchise, Evil Dead, basically ever since its conception, from I believe it was called just The Evil Dead or whatever, in 1980 whatever, with Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi directing, that original film, they set a precedent where this is not some goofy, cheesy, crappy thing. Of course, now it looks kind of goofy, cheesy, and crappy because it's it's from the 80s, and they didn't have any CGI, and they had puppets, and they had stop motion, and they had clay, and they did what they could, like they put mashed potatoes and Ritz crackers in the character's sleeve for like guts and shit. I mean, it was like a free for all. So that film though did set a precedent for the rest of the franchise, which this is a horror franchise #1. I know it's gonna be Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead 3, Army of Darkness, and the Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show. Those are horror slash with a chainsaw comedy, right? Evil Dead 1 or The Evil Dead, the first one, was primarily meant to be a straight-up horror film. And then you get Evil Dead 2013, which, of course, everyone on the friggin' internet says, it's a reboot! It's not a reboot. It's confirmed. Not a reboot. And it's never been a reboot. Just word of mouth said that it was, and everyone followed it like sheep, I guess. But in this, this, like Evil Dead 2013 and the original Evil Dead, this really doesn't have that much comedy in it, really at all. There's a few, I don't want to say funny moments because, they're not funny. It's like dark comedy, you know what I mean? It's not a racist thing. It's a thing. It's called, dark comedy. It's like, really dark and twisted and kind of evil and disturbing, but it's also funny at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, think of like Evil Dead 2, right? Where like a Deadite like eats an eyeball and like spits it out, and another girl eats the eyeball. It like flies in her mouth. That's obviously effed up, but it's also kind of funny. It's like slapstick mixed with horror, and I think that's what made the Evil Dead, especially Evil Dead 2, really shine. And this film doesn't really have any of that, so you're like, what's the point? But this film, primarily, like, again, 2013 and the original, it's meant to scare the bejesus out of you. And there is a jump scare from Jesus. It's in the trailer. That one got me. Forgot about it. And, yeah, it was a loud theater. But a lot of this is very much a case where you're like, this is really effing terrifying. Now, is this film scarier than Evil Dead 2013 or any of the other stuff? I think this film is easily the scariest, the most demented and just weird. I'm not gonna, I had a dream about it, and I'm not gonna say I had a nightmare because I didn't wake up screaming for mom, but I did have a dream about it. Okay, I don't know what that says, but it's not, when I watch a horror movie, like Scream, for example, or Evil Dead, I'm never in my chair at home or in a theater going, oh, and freaking out, you know what I mean? I don't do that, I'll jump scare, but I'm never like, mommy, you know what I mean? Like, that's not who I am. I'm not saying if you don't do that, it's an ineffective horror film, but that's just me. Maybe that's because I'm so obsessed with how movies are made and how they're, created and all that. My one buddy's like, God, that's effing gross. And I'm just like, yeah, but he did a good job with the whatever fake gallons of blood or, the practicality of it. So I can appreciate it more than just the average hobo off the street that you plucked to see a film. You know what I mean? You plucked off the street, here, see where Evil Dead Rise. And then he was like, ugh. I'm still doing that. But I'm like, yeah, I see what they're doing. I appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, it definitely is scary. As far as gory and intense, obviously a big factor of Evil Dead is the brutality, the violence, the gore. Now, it's weird to say this because I'm not like some psychopathic masochist, but when you go to a horror movie, you're expecting some level of violence and gore, right? I mean, that's the point. I didn't go to this film, I can't wait to see the gore, you know what I mean? But that's part of it, you know what I mean? So with that being said, I do think that Evil Dead 2013 is more brutal and more horrific in terms of the blood and gore. That's just me. This film, though, is way more bloody and intense than the first 3 movies, and maybe the Evil Dead Ash vs. Evil Dead show is kind of up there too, but this film does a phenomenal job at keeping it grounded. What I mean by that is that, yeah, you have the great sound design. You have amazing acting from literally everyone. Danny, I don't know if that's a dude or a girl. I really don't care. I have no clue. Maybe it's trans. He or she's trans. I don't know. But, again, I don't give a shit. But at the same time, it's like, wow, everyone here is like, the little girl, Cassie, I think, she's good. It's her first movie. She did a good job. Danny, I'm not just saying this, it's true. Danny was the one I was like, I'm just gonna say he for the sake of this review. And, Danny's just kind of like, he's just kind of standing there like, oh, look at Mom, you know what I mean? Like, I know I would be peeing and pooping myself and throwing up on the ground and running around like a little bitch if my mom was like, Mommy's with the maggot, you know what I mean? I'd be losing my stuff. So obviously, they want to keep it horrific, but they also don't want to go cheesy, right? They don't imagine they're seeing their mom in the bathtub in that one scene in the trailer, and everyone's just freaking out. They're all, ah! You know what I mean? They're all freaking. Obviously, that wouldn't happen in a serious horror film like this. So they try to keep it grounded with their emotions and their approach. And Danny is kind of a little bit of a one-note actor in terms of the performance and the expressions given. But that's more of a nitpick, honestly. I think that everyone really does a pretty good job, especially Beth, and especially Ellie, right? The main character, the girl that gets possessed. And I turned to my buddy, I said, man, it's a shame Ellie got possessed by a deadite, because she's hot as hell. She's a sexy girl. Like, her jawbones, man, she's a pretty woman. I know she's older, but she's pretty. And and I told him, I said, is it weird that she's kind of hot as a deadite? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. There's 1 or 2 shots. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But anyway, I think the thing kicked on. Sorry if you hear that. The deadites are in the basement. But overall, man, like I said, it's a very intense film, and it's grounded in the sense that you're literally in a freaking apartment. And, the cabin is kind of secluded, too, in the older films. But, there's a different sense where you're in a high-rise apartment building, and you're trying to take the elevator, that's not working. You're trying to take the stairs. There's no stairs because there was an earthquake, in L.A., Los Angeles, and they're just literally trapped in this environment, and it's really, really strange to kind of look at it and go, wow, okay, they can't escape. What do you do in that point? What do you do to kind of combat the deadites and the situation? And with that, horror ensues. So I would say the first half of the movie is more or less about the intensity and the scares and the jump scares and the world building and the atmosphere they create, right? There's a lot of very slow shots, and it's really kind of building on that paranoia that they're stuck in this freaking apartment. They really can't get out. There's people in the hallway and stuff, but they're not going to fare any better. And then the end of the film more or less focuses on blood and gore and all that, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's good because it kind of gives you the best of both when it comes to Evil Dead. But, because my one buddy was like, oh, this film, it was very scary, and then it just kind of stopped being scary in favor of the gore and the blood. I don't find blood and gore scary. If I saw a guy's intestines in real life, that would be scary. But in a movie, that doesn't affect me because I know it's all fake, right? When you're having this girl slowly creep around a corner, or there's a jump scare where she's like floating, not like running or jumping, but literally like skeeting in air, that's more terrifying to me than just a character drenched in blood, which is still effed up, but you know what I'm saying. So it kind of has the best of both worlds in terms of that. If you were looking for a very intense film, you got it. Is it as violent and brutal as Evil Dead 2013? No, I still think that film is more brutal, but this is definitely the most scariest and the most intense. Again, I'm not saying I'm having nightmares, but in terms of the scariness in the moment when you're watching it, in a big theater, and it's dark, and it's very loud, it was very effective for sure. And of course, when I get it on Blu-ray and I watch it on my TV at my house, of course that's still going to be as effective. But seeing it in a movie theater was pretty freaking cool. So going to the lore, Lee Cronin, the director, of course, was saying that, hey, there's going to be, this kind of, I guess, going back to the reboot of 2013, right? Evil Dead 1, 2, and 3. Basically, that's one, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, right? The Book of the Dead. The Necronomicon is, in that trilogy. And then there's a second Necronomicon book in the 2013 film. And then there's a third Necronomicon book, which is in Evil Dead Rise, which is this one. And you actually see all three books in Army of Darkness. So it's really cool that not only could Lee Cronin create this film, Evil Dead Rise, to connect to the first three and the show, now, in essence, Evil Dead 2013, it's not a reboot. It's literally in the same continuity, because as we know, as true fans know, the Necronomicon, right, the Deadites themselves, the Book of the Dead and all that stuff, they can manipulate time and space, right? That's why blood's coming out of the elevator. That's why Ash's Delta is in the 2013 film, even though the cabin burnt down in the show. There's a lot of stuff like that where you're like, wait, how does that work? That doesn't make sense. And then you realize, and you're like, oh, they can F with time and reality. Like, that's the whole point, That's why in this film, in the original, you have, we're gonna get you, in the first film, and then in this one, it's kind of like, mommy's with the murderers. They kind of alter their voice, and they kind of have this, like, cutesy, playful, child-esque voice and attitude, where you're like, yeah, it's creepy as hell, but it's also kind of funny. Like there's a character saying, like, I gotta, she's eating glass, and she's like, there's something in my tummy, and I'm like, oh, she said tummy, so that's kind of a little funny, but it's also bad because she's eating a wine glass, so stuff like that, it's kind of a mix and grab. And for some people, like my buddy, he hasn't seen really any of the other Evil Dead films. He's only seen the 2013 one. So there are scenes in this where, again, like I mentioned in the earlier section of this video, darkly comedic. There's you could see it as a few cheesy and corny moments, right? The one-liners, some of the funny, dark comedic twists in this film. They're either callbacks to the other films or they're in line. Because, again, Evil Dead is a horror film, but it's also, ever since the first one, yes, it's primarily horror, but it's also a little bit dark comedy, a little bit of twisted comedy in there too, and I think Lee Cronin did a really good job of kind of integrating that into the final product and having it actually work. I think it's really, really well done. In terms of horror movies, it's easily one of the best I've ever seen. I knew it was going to be good because Evil Dead always has this stamp of quality ever since I saw the first one. If you rewatch the first three, they're a bit corny and cheesy because they're older, but I'm assuming at the time when it came out, that was like the scariest shit in the world, what I mean? Like seeing like this clay slow motion in the first one, it's like, I don't know about that. Now that we have 2013 and Rise, but looking back at it, it's like, wow, this is crazy stuff, and it still pretty much holds up to this day. Apparently we're going to be getting an Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 4, which is going to be animated, so I hope that actually comes to fruition. And Evil Dead Rise, without giving anything away, this film does lead to potential more films, because again, as we know, the Necronomicon can mess with time and reality and all that fun stuff, and it's a lot of fun to kind of dig into this world, and yeah, man, it's not as brutal and just like unrelentingly violent as 2013, but if you're expecting only that, that's not what Evil Dead is. It's that, but it's also the lore and the story and the dark comedy stuff. This film, I think, has a really good story. It's simple. A mother and her children get locked in an apartment and Deadites attack. But with that, you can play so much from that little thing. And because it's so well made and so well written and acted, and really nothing was woke, I guess maybe, I think Danny's trans, but they don't, they don't shove it in your throat. It's just they hired a trans person to be an actor. If you're losing sleep over that, I don't know. Of course, there is the whole, do you agree with it, do you not agree with it, which I'm not even going to get into because that's not what this video is. Obviously they don't go, I'm so proud of your decision to transition, Danny, and she gets stabbed in the freaking neck, in the neck. It's just, they don't do that, they don't even draw upon it at all. So it's a really good, without any woke messaging, at least that I could tell, it was just a fun movie, as fun as you can have with Deadites ripping people's eyes out and whatever, but yeah, it's well made. If you like this kind of stuff, if you can stomach blood and gore, I think it's highly recommendable. It's a great addition to the Evil Dead franchise, and I really couldn't think of that many negatives, apart maybe, there's a few, like I said, there's one CGI scene in the beginning which is a little wonky because a lot of the film, 99% of the film is practical effects. And there's this one thing I was like, it's a bit wonky. And then, of course, like I said, there's one or two lines that are kind of, I don't know if you would say that. There's like a really dumb throwaway line with the pizza or something like that with the earthquake. And then there's another scene, like I said, with Danny, who's kind of just like kind of wooden half the time when, like I said, obviously Lee Corona wasn't like, run around and scream like a little girl. You know what I mean? Obviously he's not going to do that. But, you know, I think a little more emotion would have been good. But those are all small nitpicks, man. Evil Dead Rise is a bloody great time. I'm gonna give it an A. I think it was great. Again, it feels weird to give all these films an A, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I genuinely love the Evil Dead franchise. I always have since I saw the first one when I got it from the Exchange. And you know, there's some hits and misses in every movie, but in this one, I think it's a really, really good time. It's definitely better, I think, than 2013 and the rest of them in terms of like. The way it's shot. There's some really good shots in there as well, with like the little door thing, you know, when I don't know what it's like, a door thing, you know, the circle. It's in the trailer. And yeah, there's some genuinely creepy moments, a few darkly comedic moments, good story, good acting, good writing, a really badass ending. Maybe not as badass as 2013, that's all I'm going to say. But again, there's no competition here. I'm trying to review each movie as its own thing and not comparing it to others. So as a film, Evil Dead Rise really, really made me happy. I can't wait to hopefully see it again in theaters. And for sure get it on Blu-ray and Steelbook Echo. If you're watching this, man, I'm going to get this thing on Steelbook. You know I am. But yeah, I can't wait to see more of this franchise, whether that be animated Season 4 or whatever going on in the future. Tell me in the comments down below without spoiling it. What did you think about Evil Dead Rise? I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of the best in the franchise, and it's definitely a standout in the horror scene. It's funny, I saw Scream 6, and I saw this so far, and Scream 6 was phenomenal too. But if I was to compare Scream 6 and Evil Dead Rise in terms of scariness, in terms of like horror effectiveness, Evil Dead Rise 100%. You know, demons are always going to be scarier than just a guy with a knife. You know what I mean? Because a guy with a knife, you can just get 50 cops in there, just blow his friggin' head off, and you're done. You know what I mean? You go home. Obviously, this isn't going to happen in the movie, because then you wouldn't have a movie. But in this, you know, you can't, unless you like completely dismember the Deadite, it's going to come back at you. And of course, if you've seen the film, you know how it ends with the Deadites, and I think it's pretty crazy. And again, it's a world-building film. It's intense. When the film ended, I kind of did that. I was like, oh shit. Oh my god, you know, it was a good movie, but like that movie and Joker really, like when I was done, I had to take a deep breath and be like, I compress. I was like, this is insanity, but really good insanity. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.